The Vrax fleet was a nightmare made real. 300 bioships, each the size of a city, bearing down on the secure facility with murderous intent. The Vrax Prime had committed everything to this attack. It would win here or die trying. Captain Daejung studied the tactical display with the calm of a man who had nothing left to lose. Around him, his command crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had been prisoners 3 minutes ago. Now they were humanity's slayers again. Hana analysis, Daejung said. Lieutenant Hana's fingers flew across her console. 300 capital ships, approximately 9,000 fighter-class organisms. They're targeting the facility and the civilian station. If they breach the facility, we're all dead. Time until they reach firing range? 11 minutes. Then we have 11 minutes to do something impossible. Daejung opened a channel to all ships. Listen carefully. We're going to hurt them in ways they don't expect. Make them afraid. Make them remember that humanity doesn't know how to lose. Captain Young-soo had died months ago, but his ship had been rebuilt. The new Soul's vengeance was even more dangerous than the first, designed specifically for suicide runs. Captain Dae-won, Young-soo's former first officer, commanded her now. Soul's vengeance is ready, Dae-won reported. Just point me at the biggest target, the central hive ship. It's coordinating the fleet. Take it out and they'll lose cohesion. Understood. It's been an honor, Captain. Daejung's jaw tightened. Come back alive, Dae-won. That's an order. I'll try. Soul's vengeance accelerated, her engines burning bright enough to see from 3 systems away. The Vrax fleet noticed and redirected fire, but the ship was too fast, too small, too determined. At 70% light speed, Dae-won and his skeleton crew evacuated in emergency pods. Soul's vengeance continued on autopilot, a spear of metal and fury aimed at the Vrax Prime's heart. The central hive ship tried to evade, but momentum is absolute. The collision was visible as a second sun, brief and terrible. The Vrax fleet faltered. Without central coordination, the bioships hesitated, recalculating, adapting. It gave the humans precious seconds. All fighters engage, Daejung ordered. Jae-won, begin infiltration. Haerin, light them up. Commander Jae-won's stealth ship slipped through the chaos, invisible to Vrax sensors. His teams carried biological weapons that Dr. Bora had designed, poisons that would corrupt the Vrax biomass from inside. They attached the weapons to key hive ships and retreated. Ensign Haerin began her psychological warfare broadcast. She had spent 18 months learning how to speak directly to the Vrax hive mind. Now she used that knowledge to show them their own extinction. You are dying, her broadcast said in 1,000 frequencies. You have consumed 1,000 species, but humanity will consume you. We are the end of your story. We are the thing that nightmares fear. The Vrax hive mind recoiled from the broadcast. For the first time in its million-year existence, it felt something close to fear. But fear made it desperate. The Vrax fleet split into 3 groups, targeting the facility, the civilian station, and the human fleet simultaneously. They would take everyone with them. They're going for mutual destruction, Hana reported. We can't stop all 3 groups. Daejung looked at the display. 40,000 human soldiers, 6,000 coalition guards, 300,000 civilians. He had seconds to decide who lived and who died. Protect the civilians, he ordered. All ships to the civilian station. The facility and guards will have to hold on their own. Sir, we're in the facility, Hana reminded him quietly. I know. The human fleet turned toward the civilian station, abandoning their own position. The coalition guards watched in confusion and growing horror as their supposed saviors left them behind. But Daejung had made one more calculation. Dr. Bora appeared on his private channel. Her face pale. Are you sure? She asked. No, but do it anyway. Dr. Bora activated the bioweapon, the one she had spent months creating and hoping never to use. It deployed from hidden pods on the human ships, spreading through space like invisible death. The weapon was airborne, waterborne, and contact transmissible. It touched every Vrax organism in the system, and it severed them from the hive mind. 90,000 Vrax drones suddenly became individuals. 90,000 consciousnesses that had been trapped in their own bodies for years, decades, centuries, suddenly remembered everything they had done while controlled by the Prime. The screaming was not audible in space, but every human with Vrax communication equipment could hear it in their minds. It was the sound of hell given voice. The Vrax fleet stopped attacking. The bioships went dark. drifting in space as their crews collapsed into madness and despair. Some ships fired on each other in confused rage. Most simply died, their biological systems shutting down from shock. Private Su Min heard the screaming and started crying. Corporal Jinnah held her, crying too. They had won, but the victory tasted like ash. The facility survived. The civilian station survived. The human fleet survived. But 42,000 Vrax drones were now free, aware and utterly broken by what they had been forced to do. Commander Jae-won led teams to secure the largest Vrax bioship. Inside, they found the Vrax Prime itself, a massive organism spanning 12 decks. It was still alive, but severed from its drones, rendered powerless. Do we kill it? Jae-won asked over the comm. No, Dae-jung replied. We let the coalition decide. We're done making those choices. The battle was over. The war was over. The Vrax threat, which had consumed the galaxy for 10 years, ended in 4 hours of desperate fighting and one biological weapon that broke a species' mind. Chancellor Valoth came aboard the human flagship 3 days later. She looked at Dae-jung with an expression that mixed gratitude, horror, and profound sadness. You saved us, she said. Again. We destroyed the Vrax, Dae-jung replied. Not just their fleet. Their entire species. Every drone is now free, but they're all traumatized beyond healing. We committed genocide and called it mercy. The tribunal can do whatever it wants. I'll accept any punishment. He looked tired beyond measure. I'm done, Chancellor. We all are. Send us home. The tribunal reconvened 2 weeks later. It was broadcast across Coalition space, watched by billions. Dae-jung stood in the center, surrounded by Coalition leaders from 17 species. He wore his uniform but no medals. Hana, Jinnah, Jae-won, Su Min, and Dr. Bora stood beside him. The charges were read: genocide, war crimes, destruction of civilian infrastructure, unauthorized use of biological weapons, and 16 other violations of Coalition law. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Then General Myungdae presented the defense. Not a legal defense, but a mathematical one. He showed the projected casualties if the war had continued. 7 trillion dead within 5 years. He showed the actual casualties. 900 billion, still horrific, but not extinction. These soldiers did terrible things, Myungdae said. They broke every rule, violated every convention, and committed acts that will haunt them forever. But they saved 7 of every 8 lives in Coalition space. How do we judge that? The prosecution called Su Min to testify. Everyone expected her to defend Dae-jung, her captain and commander. Instead, she stood before the tribunal and condemned him. Captain Dae-jung gave orders that killed millions, she said, her voice clear and strong. He destroyed worlds, sacrificed soldiers, and used weapons that should never exist. He did all of this knowing exactly what it meant. These acts were evil, regardless of their outcomes. If we excuse them because we won, we become monsters too. The chamber erupted in chaos. Dae-jung himself looked surprised. Then Su Min continued. But I also testify that Captain Dae-jung carried a burden no one else would. Every decision tortured him. Every death haunted him. He became a monster so the rest of us could stay human. He sacrificed his soul so billions could live. These two truths exist together. He is guilty and he is a hero. Both are real. The tribunal debated for 6 days. The coalition was split down the middle. Half wanted the humans executed, half wanted them honored. The compromise, when it came, satisfied no one and yet seemed inevitable. The verdict was read by Chancellor Valoth herself. The human expeditionary force is found guilty of war crimes under coalition law. These crimes are acknowledged, recorded, and condemned. However, in recognition of the extraordinary circumstances and the billions of lives saved, the following sentence is issued. The expeditionary force is disbanded. No member may serve in coalition military space again. Captain Dae-jung and senior officers accept full responsibility and are exiled to frontier space for 20 years. Earth is granted full coalition membership with restrictions on military deployment for 1 generation. Dae-jung accepted the verdict without protest. We'll leave within the week, but Dr. Bora stayed behind. Someone needs to help the freed Vrax, she said. They're victims too. It'll take decades, maybe centuries, to rehabilitate them. I can't walk away from that. Jinnah stayed too. I'm a medic. There are 42,000 patients who need help. I'm staying. 1,500 human soldiers volunteered to stay with them, forming a rehabilitation corps. The rest returned to Earth as war criminals and saviors forever marked by what they had done. 5 years passed. Hana was now Admiral Hana, training Earth's new defense fleet. She taught them human tactics, but with a difference: restraint, ethics. 18 months into the war, Earth finally sent someone to check on its soldiers. General Myungdae arrived on a sleek diplomatic vessel, accompanied by lawyers, politicians, and observers. He was 60 years old, decorated with medals from the Unification Wars, and completely unprepared for what he found. The human expeditionary force had changed. The soldiers moved differently now, with the efficient brutality of people who had seen too much. Their ships smelled of recycled air and old blood. The walls were covered with names of the dead, written in careful handwriting by those who survived. Dae-jung met the general in the briefing room. He had not slept in 30 hours and looked like a man 20 years older than he was. "Captain," Myungdae said formally, "Earth has concerns about reports from Coalition space. We need to discuss your conduct." "Which atrocity would you like to start with?" Dae-jung asked flatly. The general blinked. "Excuse me?" "Tirthos 9, where I killed 10,000 to save 300,000. Kelvan 7, where I poisoned a planet. Helion Prime, where I abandoned 2 million civilians. Operation Extinction, where I sacrificed 15,000 soldiers. Take your pick, General. I remember all of them." Myungdae spent 3 weeks observing the fleet. He watched Hana coordinate a battle with cold precision, sacrificing a colony's infrastructure to deny the Vrak's resources. He watched Jinna work 40 hours straight to save wounded soldiers from 6 different species. He watched Ensign Hayron broadcast psychological warfare that made even hardened veterans uncomfortable. He watched Sumin sit alone in the cargo bay, staring at nothing, her eyes hollow. "What happened to her?" Myungdae asked Dr. Bora. "She saw what we've become," Bora replied. "She was working on something classified, filling vials with green liquid. She's the conscience we are all trying to ignore." "And what are you working on?" Dr. Bora was quiet for a long moment. "A weapon. Something that could end this war permanently." "Show me." She led him to her laboratory. Inside containment fields, Vrak's drones twitched and writhed. On her screens were complex biological models that made Myungdae's head hurt. "The Vraks are controlled by a hive mind," Bora explained. "I've found a way to sever that connection. This weapon wouldn't kill them. It would free them. Every Vrak's drone would suddenly become an individual again, conscious and aware but no longer controlled by the Prime." "That sounds like a good thing." "Does it? Imagine suddenly remembering everything you did while the hive mind controlled you. Every person you consumed, every child you harvested, every world you destroyed, all while being completely aware but unable to stop yourself." Her hands shook. "This weapon would free them into a nightmare. They'd be alive, but they'd wish they were dead. Then why create it? Because if we need it, we'll use it. That's what we do now. We create horrors and call it necessity." Myungdae found Commander Jae-won in the intelligence section, coordinating with his stealth teams. Jae-won's methods were effective and deeply troubling. He had infiltrated Vrak's occupied worlds, poisoned their food supplies, and assassinated key biostructures. He fought without honor, without mercy, without hesitation. "Do you enjoy this?" Myungdae asked. "No," Jae-won said simply. "I'm just good at it." The Vraks launched a desperate assault on 3 Coalition core worlds. They were losing the war and they knew it. This was their final attempt to force a stalemate. Billions of lives hung in the balance. The Coalition fleet responded with overwhelming force, but they were spread thin. They needed the humans, but politically they could not ask. Too many species had called for war crimes trials. Too many politicians had condemned human tactics while quietly relying on human victories. Admiral Korthax made the request unofficially. He came to Dae-jung's ship alone without authorization, risking his career. "We need you," he said simply. "Not officially. Not publicly. But we need you." "I know," Dae-jung replied. "We'll be there." The human fleet moved to defend the core worlds. For 2 weeks they fought the largest battles of the war. Youngsu's sacrifice had shown the way. Human ships rammed Vrak's vessels when ammunition ran low. Hayron's psychological warfare broke entire Vrak's formations. Jae-won's team sabotaged Vrak supply lines behind enemy lines. They won. The 3 core worlds survived. Coalition High Command issued a formal thank you that made no mention of human tactics. Then they received the order to disarm. Chancellor Veloth appeared on every human ship's screen simultaneously. The Coalition Parliament has voted. The human expeditionary force will be confined pending a full tribunal investigation. You will surrender your weapons and submit to Coalition custody. Any resistance will be treated as an act of war. The order came from fear, not justice. Half the Coalition wanted the humans tried for war crimes. Half wanted them to continue fighting. The compromise was to lock them up until the politicians figured out what to do. Admiral Korthax sent a coded message 3 hours before Coalition forces arrived to enforce the order. It was brief. "I'm sorry. They're coming. You have time to run." Daejung called his senior staff. Hana, Jinna, Jaewon, Sumin, Dr. Bora, and a dozen others gathered in the conference room. "We have a choice," Daejung said. "We can submit to the tribunal and trust Coalition justice, or we can fight our way out and become criminals." "What did we do wrong?" Hana asked. "We saved billions of lives. We broke their laws to do it. We committed atrocities by their standards. The math doesn't change that." Sumin spoke up, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "We submit. If we run, everything we did becomes pointless. We fought to save the Coalition. We can't turn against them now. They'll put us on trial. Some of us will probably be executed. Then we accept that. We're soldiers. We don't get to choose victory without consequences." The vote was close but clear. The human fleet would surrender. But Daejung did one thing first. He transmitted all of Dr. Bora's research on the bioweapon to Earth, along with detailed instructions on its manufacture and deployment. If the Coalition tried to imprison humanity forever, Earth would have leverage. Insurance, he called it. Bora called it mutual destruction. Coalition forces arrived with overwhelming numbers. The humans powered down their weapons and opened their airlocks. 40,000 soldiers became 40,000 prisoners without a single shot fired. They were confined to their ships, which were towed to a secure facility in neutral space. The tribunal would convene in 3 weeks. Lawyers from Earth were already on their way, though everyone knew this was more political than legal. Sumin found Daejung in his quarters on the 3rd day of confinement. He was writing letters, one for each soldier who had died under his command. 15,437 letters. He had finished 3,216. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Yes, I do. They died because of my orders. The least I can do is tell their families why." "What will you say at the tribunal?" "The truth. I gave the orders. I knew what they meant. I'd do it again if I had to." "They'll crucify you." "Good, someone should pay for what we did." Sumin sat beside him. "I'm going to testify against you." Daejung looked up, surprised. "Why?" "Because someone needs to say it was wrong. Someone needs to stand up and say that victory doesn't justify everything. If I don't, we're just monsters who got lucky." "You're probably right, but I'll also testify that you saved billions of lives, that you carried a weight no one else would, that you're a monster who did monstrous things for good reasons." She stood. "The tribunal needs to hear both truths." The confinement continued. The soldiers waited, uncertain of their fate. Some wrote letters. Some prayed. Some played cards and pretended everything was normal. Then, 3 days before the tribunal was set to begin, the alarm sounded. The Vraks had found them. A massive fleet, larger than anything seen before, dropped out of FTL directly on top of the secure facility. The Coalition guard ships were destroyed in minutes. The facility itself would fall within the hour, and the only military force capable of stopping them was locked up, disarmed, and under arrest. Chancellor Veloth appeared on the screens again. This time her elegant composure was gone, replaced by raw terror. "Captain Daejung, I know you have no reason to help us. I know we've treated you unfairly, but if you don't fight, everyone here dies. 40,000 of your people, 6,000 Coalition guards, 300,000 civilians on the nearby station." Daejung looked at his senior staff. They looked back at him. No one spoke for a long moment. "One condition," Daejung said finally. "This is the last time. When this battle ends, humanity is done. No more wars. No more sacrifices. We go home and you leave us alone forever." "Agreed," Veloth said immediately. "Your weapons are being released now. Please, Captain, save us one more time." The human fleet powered up. Weapon systems came online. Soldiers who had been prisoners 5 minutes ago were now the last line of defense. Sumin strapped into her combat station. Beside her, Jinna checked her medical supplies. Jaewon coordinated his stealth teams. Hayrin prepared her psychological warfare broadcasts. Dr. Bora loaded her bioweapon into delivery systems, Just in case, Daejong stood on his command deck and looked at the massive Vrax fleet bearing down on them. He was so tired. He wanted to rest, to stop making decisions that killed people, to be something other than a monster, but not yet. One more battle, one more sacrifice. 1 year into the war, and the Vrax were retreating for the first time in a decade. The news spread across Coalition space like fire. But with the celebrations came whispers of the cost. The humans had pushed back the unstoppable enemy. But at what price? They were no longer called the Human Expeditionary Force. Soldiers from a dozen species had given them a new name: the Slayers. It was spoken with respect and fear in equal measure. Parents used it to scare children. Veterans used it with grim understanding. Politicians avoided saying it at all. Captain Young-soo commanded the experimental warship Soul's Vengeance. It was built with human designs that Coalition engineers called insane and barbaric. The ship had no shields, minimal life support, and enough weapons to crack a moon. Young-soo was 43 years old, missing his left arm from a Vrax attack and utterly fearless. "She's a beautiful ship," he told his crew on the day they launched. "She'll probably kill us all, but she'll take a lot of the enemy with us." His crew loved him for his honesty. Soul's Vengeance proved its worth at the Battle of Proxima Reach. A Vrax hive ship, massive and ancient, was consuming a refugee convoy. Coalition forces could not penetrate its organic armor. They called for the humans. Young-soo studied the hive ship and made a simple calculation. "We're going to ram it." "Sir?" his first officer asked. "At 90% light speed, the impact will destroy both ships, but the convoy will escape." The crew did not argue. They had all volunteered for this ship, knowing what it meant. They accelerated toward the hive ship faster and faster, until the universe itself seemed to bend around them. At the last second, the crew evacuated in emergency pods. Young-soo stayed at the helm. "Someone needs to keep her steady," he said to the empty bridge. The impact was visible from 3 star systems away. The hive ship and Soul's Vengeance became a brief, bright star, and then nothing. The refugee convoy escaped with 40,000 lives saved. Young-soo's sacrifice made him a legend, but it also made the Coalition uncomfortable. They had rules against suicide attacks. The humans had proven again that they did not share such restrictions. Dr. Bora made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying captured Vrax specimens for months, trying to understand their biology. What she found made her sick. "They're sentient," she told Daejong in her laboratory. Around them, Vrax drones floated in containment fields, their grotesque bodies twitching. Not the hive mind itself, but the individual drones. "They have thoughts, feelings, fear. They're aware of what they're doing and they can't stop." Daejong stared at the specimens. "They're prisoners in their own bodies." "Yes, the hive mind controls them completely, but their individual consciousness remains. Every person the Vrax consume becomes a drone, trapped and aware, forced to help consume others." Dr. Bora's hands shook. "We've killed thousands of them. They were victims too. Can we free them? I don't know. Maybe. But it would require extensive research, resources we don't have during a war." "Then we keep fighting," Daejong said quietly. "And we live with what we've done." Corporal Jinnah had saved 473 lives since the war began. She kept count in a small notebook, writing each name in careful handwriting. She said it helped her remember why she was there. During the defense of Station Meridian, she saved number 474. A Coalition soldier, badly wounded by Vrax toxins, was dying in the medical bay. His species had called humans barbarians after Terthos 9. Now Jinnah worked for 6 hours straight to save his life. When he woke, he stared at her with confusion. "Why?" "Because I can," Jinnah replied simply. "Because every life matters, even if we sometimes have to sacrifice some to save others." The soldier, whose name was Thren, became the first Coalition officer to formally request transfer to a human unit. Dozens more would follow, but respect came slowly and fear came faster. Ensign Hayren specialized in psychological warfare. She was 25, brilliant, and deeply disturbing to everyone who worked with her. She had hacked into the Vrax communication network and learned how to broadcast directly into the hive mind. "I'm going to show them what happens when they attack us," she explained to Hana during a strategy meeting. "I'll send them footage of every battle they've lost, every ship destroyed, every hive burned. The hive mind learns from experience. Let's teach it to fear humanity." "That's terrorism," Hana said. "Yes," Hayren agreed. Is that a problem? Hana looked to Daejung, who said nothing. The silence was permission. Aaron's broadcast proved devastatingly effective. Vrak's forces began to hesitate before attacking human positions. Some even retreated without engaging. For the first time in the war, Vrak's drones surrendered, their connection to the hive mind disrupted by terror. The coalition was horrified and grateful in equal measure. Chancellor Veloth, the political leader of the 17 species, demanded a private meeting with Daejung. She was an elegant being, almost ethereal, with silver skin and eyes like deep pools. She had led her people for 60 years and had never seen anything like humanity. "What are you?" she asked Daejung, not with anger but genuine curiosity. "Survivors," he replied. "We spent 10,000 years killing each other. We learned every way to hurt, to destroy, to win at any cost. You've had galactic peace for 500 years. You forgot what war really means. Is this what you are? Killers? When we need to be. But we're also the medics who save enemy soldiers. We're the engineers who rebuild what we destroy. We're the soldiers who cry at night for the people we couldn't save. We're everything, Chancellor. Light and dark together. What happens when the war ends? What happens to Slayers in peacetime?" Daejung had no answer. The Vrax Prime, the central intelligence controlling the swarm, had finally recognized humanity as its true threat. It studied the humans with cold intelligence. It had consumed 1,000 species across 1,000,000 years, but none had fought like this. None had been so willing to embrace horror for survival. It developed a plan called Operation Extinction. 50 human-defended positions would be attacked simultaneously. The humans would be forced to split their forces or abandon their allies. Either way, they would be weakened. And the Prime had identified the keystone, Captain Daejung himself. Remove him, and the human resolve would crumble. Lieutenant Hana saw the pattern emerging 3 hours before the attack began. She plotted the attack vectors on her screens and her blood turned cold. "It's a trap," she told Daejung. "They're not attacking the positions. They're going after our supply lines. If we respond to the attacks, we'll lose the convoy. Without supplies, we're stranded." Daejung looked at the map. 40,000 soldiers at 50 positions. Most of them were human. All of them trusted him to make the right call. "We save the convoy," he said. "Abandon 30 positions. Concentrate everything on protecting the supply line." "Sir, that's 15,000 soldiers. We'd be leaving them to die." "I know," the orders went out. 30 positions received the same message. Hold as long as possible, then retreat if you can. Reinforcements will not arrive. Commander Jae-won led the defense of the supply convoy. His stealth ships ambushed the Vrax fleet, buying precious time. Teo's weapons devastated the enemy, but they kept coming. For 8 hours the battle raged. At the 30 abandoned positions, soldiers fought knowing no help would come. Some retreated successfully. Most did not. Teo was at position 17 when the Vrax overwhelmed them. His last transmission was simple. Worth it. The convoy survived. So did 25,000 soldiers. 15,000 died, including Teo, the man who smiled when designing weapons and cried when reading letters from home. The human fleet held a memorial service on every ship simultaneously. 40,000 voices spoke 15,000 names. Daejung spoke too, his voice breaking only once on Teo's name. After the service, Private Sumin did something unprecedented. She refused orders. For an entire day, she sat in the cargo bay and would not move, would not fight, would not be part of the machine that ground up lives for victory. 300 soldiers joined her in silent protest. Daejung did not punish them. Instead, he called an assembly of the entire expeditionary force. 40,000 soldiers gathered in hangar bays and recreation rooms, connected by video across 12 ships. "You have every right to hate me," Daejung began. His face was gray, his eyes sunken. "I gave the order that killed 15,000 of our people. I chose the convoy over their lives. I made that decision in 10 seconds and I'll live with it forever." He paused, looking directly at the camera, at all of them. "I am a monster. I have to be. Someone has to make these choices, and I decided it would be me so you wouldn't have to. But I understand if you can't follow a monster anymore. Anyone who wants to leave will be sent home with full honors. No shame, no punishment. You've already given more than anyone should ask." The vote took 6 hours. 12 soldiers out of 40,000 accepted the offer to leave. The rest stayed. Suman approached Daejung after the vote. "I still think you're wrong. I think these choices are destroying us. You're probably right, but someone has to do it," she continued. And better you carry that weight than me. I'm not strong enough. Strength has nothing to do with it, Dayjug said. I'm not strong. I'm just empty enough that there's room for all this guilt. The war continued and the Slayers kept fighting. 3 months had passed since Turthos 9, and the human fleet had been quietly moved to the Outer Rim. Coalition High Command claimed it was a strategic deployment. Everyone knew the truth. They wanted the humans as far from civilized space as possible. The Outer Rim was where the Coalition was losing the worst. Dozens of colonies had fallen to the Vrax in the past year alone. It was a graveyard of dead worlds and broken fleets. The Coalition sent their criminals and exiles here. Now they sent the humans. Private Sumin sat in the cargo bay of her transport ship, cleaning her rifle for the 3rd time that day. She was 19 years old and had joined the military to see the stars. Instead, she had seen things that kept her awake at night. She thought about Turthos 9 constantly, about the 10,000 people who died because Captain Daijung pressed a button. You're thinking too much again, said Corporal Jinnah, sitting beside her. Jinnah was a medic, calm and steady, with gentle hands that had saved more lives than Sumin could count. It'll make you slow. Were we right? Sumin asked. At Turthos 9? Jinnah was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. But asking that question means you're still human. Hold on to it. Commander Jaewon's voice crackled over the intercom. All personnel, prepare for operation briefing in 10 minutes. Jaewon ran the Stealth Reconnaissance Division. He was thin and quiet, with eyes that seemed to see through people. Before the war, he had worked in intelligence, doing things he never talked about. Now he did worse things, and he talked about them even less. The briefing room was crowded. Lieutenant Hana stood at the front, a holographic display showing a green and blue planet behind her. This is Kelvin 7, population 8 million. The Vrax landed here 3 days ago. Coalition forces are attempting a standard evacuation. How long until the planet falls? Asked Teo. 2 weeks, maybe 3. The Coalition will save about 40% of the population if they're lucky. And if we help? Daejung asked from the back of the room. Hana's expression hardened. If we implement what I'm calling the Scorched Earth Protocol, we can save 70%. The room fell silent. Everyone had heard whispers about Hana's new strategy. Now they would learn what it meant. The Vrax feed on biomass, Hana explained. They consume everything organic, people, animals, plants, everything. Then they convert it into more Vrax. Every person they capture makes them stronger. So we stop giving them food. She pressed a button. The hologram changed, showing forests burning and cities crumbling. We destroy everything the Vrax can use. We burn the forests. We poison the water. We level the cities. We turn every world they touch into a dead rock. You want to destroy the colony to save it? Sumin whispered. Yes. The vote was not unanimous. 53 soldiers requested transfers. Daejung granted them all. The rest prepared for Kelvin 7. They arrived before the Coalition fleet expected them. Jaewon's stealth ships landed first, invisible to sensors. His team spread through the planet's biosphere, releasing chemicals into the soil and water. The poisons would not kill humans immediately, but they would make the biomass toxic to the Vrax. The Vrax noticed within hours. Their feeding patterns changed. They became more aggressive, trying to harvest as much as possible before the planet became useless. The Coalition forces panicked at the increased attacks. Then the human fleet arrived in full force. Daijung did not ask for permission. His ships dropped incendiary weapons across 3 continents. Forests that had stood for 1,000 years burned in minutes. Agricultural zones turned to ash. The Vrax, sensing their food supply disappearing, began to retreat. But Hana had predicted this. Human fighters waited in orbit, targeting the Vrax bioships as they fled. Teo's new weapons tore through their organic hulls like paper. Not one Vrax ship escaped. The Coalition evacuated 6 million people from Kelvin 7. 2 million died in the fires or the fighting. The planet itself was ruined, its ecosystem destroyed for generations. Admiral Korthax, a Coalition officer with blue-gray skin and 6 arms, came aboard the human flagship 3 days later. He had fought the Vrax for 8 years and had lost every member of his family to them. He was supposed to arrest Daijung for what he had done. Instead, he studied the human captain across the conference table. Dr. Bora sat nearby, taking notes as she always did, observing the meeting with scientific detachment. You murdered a planet, Korthax said. I saved 6 million lives, Daejung replied. The planet is dead. The people are alive. In 50 years, they can return and rebuild. In 50 years, Vrax's victims would just be more Vrax. Korthax's 6 arms trembled with emotion humans could not read. We have rules, conventions, we do not destroy worlds. And you've been losing for 10 years, Daejung said, his voice tired. I don't enjoy this. I don't sleep anymore. I see the faces of everyone who dies because of my orders. But they hired us because you couldn't do what was necessary, so we do it and you get to keep your honor. That is not fair. No, Daejung agreed. It's not. Korthax left without making an arrest. The coalition issued a formal censure against the human fleet, but they also quietly gave Daejung complete operational authority in the Outer Rim. They condemned him publicly and needed him privately. The pattern repeated across a dozen worlds. The humans arrived, implemented brutal tactics, and saved more lives than the coalition's gentle approach ever could. They became known as Slayers, a name whispered with fear and grudging respect. But not everyone accepted it. Sumin grew quieter with each mission. During the Battle of Helion Prime, she saw something that broke her. Helion Prime was a major coalition world, home to 22 billion people. The Vrax attacked with everything they had. Coalition High Command ordered the human fleet to defend the capital city at all costs. It was a beautiful city, full of art and history, the cultural center of 3 species. Daejung studied the battle maps and saw the trap immediately. The Vrax were using the city as bait. They knew the coalition would never abandon it. They would send every ship to defend it, leaving the rest of the planet vulnerable. The Vrax would take the planet and the city would fall anyway. We abandoned the capital, Daejung ordered. Sir? Hana said carefully. 2 million civilians are in that city. 20 billion are on the rest of the planet. We save the many or lose everyone. The human fleet withdrew from the capital and attacked the main Vrax fleet instead. Without the humans, the coalition forces at the capital were overrun in 6 hours. 2 million people died, but the planet survived and 20 billion lives were saved. Sumin watched the capital burn from her transport ship. She watched civilians running through streets while Vrax harvesters tore them apart. She watched children screaming for parents who were already gone. And she watched her fellow soldiers turn away from the screens because they could not bear to see what their orders had caused. That night, she found Daejung standing alone in the observation deck, staring at Helion Prime below. How do you do it? She asked. Her voice was hollow. How do you give those orders and stay human? Daejung did not look at her. I don't know if I am human anymore. Maybe that's the cost. Was it worth it? Those 2 million people? Ask the 20 billion who are still alive. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He finally turned to face her. His eyes were empty, like he had burned out everything inside himself except the ability to make terrible choices. You can hate me, Sumin. Most days I hate myself. But someone has to give these orders. Someone has to be the monster so everyone else can stay human. I volunteered for that job when I put on this uniform. I didn't volunteer to be a monster. Then don't be one. Stay angry. Stay human. Remember every face of every person we couldn't save. When this war ends, people like you will make sure people like me never get to forget what we did. Sumin left without another word. She did not sleep that night or many nights after. The coalition formally censured the human fleet again. Admiral Korthax delivered the censure personally, but this time he included something else. A classified report showing that Daejung's tactics had reduced coalition casualties by 67%. Secretly, coalition officers were studying human methods. They would never admit it publicly, but they were learning to fight the way humanity fought. The war continued and the Slayers kept slaying. They saved billions and sacrificed millions. They won battles and lost pieces of their souls. And every night, Daejung stood alone in the observation deck, counting the cost of survival. Behind him, invisible in the shadows, Hana watched. She understood now what Daejung had always known. Victory was not glorious. It was just the bloody math of staying alive one more day. The alien stood in the center of the human orbital station, its crystalline body catching the light in 1,000 different colors. Ambassador Thalvan had traveled 3 months to reach Earth, and now it waited in a room full of suspicious human faces. Captain Daejung sat across from the alien, his scarred hands folded on the metal table. He had fought in Earth's last great war, the one that finally united all the nations under a single banner. His face showed those years of combat, with a thin scar running from his left eye to his jaw. He studied the alien with the same careful attention he once used to study enemy positions. "You want to hire human soldiers," Dae-jung said. It was not a question. "Your species has recently achieved faster-than-light travel," Talvan replied, its voice like wind chimes. "The Galactic Coalition welcomes new civilizations. We have a small problem with pirates in the outer systems. We need mercenaries. We will pay with technology and resources your world desperately needs." Lieutenant Hana stood behind Dae-jung, her arms crossed. She was young, only 28, but her eyes were sharp. She had graduated top of her class in military strategy and had already noticed something wrong. The alien was lying. Not about everything, but about something important. "Pirates," Dae-jung repeated slowly. "You traveled 3 months to hire primitive humans to fight pirates? You have 17 species in your coalition, all more advanced than us, but you need us for pirates." Talvan's crystalline surface flickered slightly, a sign of discomfort that Hana filed away for future reference. "Your species has certain qualities that would be useful. The Coalition's military operates under strict honor codes. Sometimes flexibility is required." "You mean you fight with one hand tied behind your back?" said Specialist Teo from the corner of the room. He was a short man with a crooked smile, known for his creative use of explosives. "You want someone willing to get dirty." The alien said nothing, which was answer enough. Dae-jung leaned back in his chair. "Show me the contract." The negotiations took 3 days. Dae-jung insisted on better terms, more resources, and guaranteed safe passage for all human personnel. The Coalition agreed to everything too quickly, which confirmed Hana's suspicions. On the 3rd night, while the rest of the crew slept, she broke into the encrypted files the aliens had brought with them. What she found made her blood run cold. The next morning, she showed Dae-jung the truth. They were not fighting pirates. The Galactic Coalition was losing a war of extinction against something called the Vrak Swarm. The files showed worlds consumed, populations harvested, and a military force that had been retreating for 10 years. The Coalition was dying, and they were too bound by their honor codes to fight the kind of war needed to survive. Dae-jung confronted Talvan in private. Dr. Bora, the fleet's medical officer and xenobiologist, was the only other person present. She was a careful woman who chose her words with precision, and she watched the alien with scientific curiosity. "You lied," Dae-jung said simply. Talvan's entire body dimmed. "Yes, you're not fighting pirates. You're facing extinction. Yes, why lie? Because if we told the truth, you would have demanded more than we can pay. Because my people are ashamed that we need help from a species that only learned to travel between stars 5 years ago. Because we are desperate, and desperation makes even honorable beings do dishonorable things." The silence stretched. Dr. Bora broke it. "Tell us about the Vraks." Talvan showed them everything. The Vraks were a hive mind, a species that consumed organic matter and converted it into more of themselves. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. They spread like a plague across the galaxy, and the Coalition's careful, honorable warfare was useless against them. Every battle the Coalition won by protecting civilians and infrastructure was a battle the Vraks used to gather more biomass. "We follow rules of engagement," Talvan explained. "We evacuate civilians first. We preserve valuable structures. We offer surrender terms. The Vraks have no such concerns. They adapt to our tactics because they know we will always choose mercy over victory." "And you think humans won't?" Dae-jung said. "I have studied your history, your wars, the terrible things your species has done to each other. I do not say this to insult you. I say this because we need soldiers who understand that sometimes survival requires terrible choices." Dae-jung called for a vote among the 12 ships of the human expeditionary force. 40,000 soldiers heard the truth. They had been lied to, manipulated, and brought to fight in a war they did not understand. The vote took 6 hours. 39,782 voted to stay. 218 voted to return home. Those who wanted to leave were put on a transport back to Earth with full honor. The rest prepared for war. The journey to the first combat zone took 2 weeks. The human ships were crude compared to Coalition vessels, built from scavenged technology and human engineering. They were ugly, functional, and deadly. Teo spent the voyage designing new weapons. Hana studied every file on the Vrak she could find. Dr. Bora prepared the medical bay for casualties she knew would come. They arrived at Terthos 9, a mining colony on the edge of Coalition space. The Vrax had already landed. Coalition ships were evacuating civilians according to strict protocol. Children first, then scientists, then skilled workers, then everyone else. The Vrax were systematically harvesting the population left behind, dragging them into their bioships. Daijung watched the evacuation from his command deck. The math was simple and horrible. At this rate, 300,000 people would escape. 10,000 would die. The coalition commander was following procedure perfectly. "Hana," Daejung said quietly, "can we overload the colony's reactor?" She understood immediately. Yes, it would take 6 minutes. The explosion would destroy everything within 50 kilometers, including the Vrak ships, all of them. And the civilians still on the surface? 10,000 dead. Daijung closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw a different battlefield, a different choice 20 years ago. He had made the hard decision then, too. It never got easier. Do it. Teo led the team that infiltrated the colony's power station. The coalition forces did not understand what was happening until it was too late. The reactor went critical, and Daejung ordered all human ships to maximum distance. The coalition ships, with their evacuated civilians, fled. Terthos 9 exploded like a small sun. The Vrax bioships dissolved in the blast, along with 10,000 people who were still waiting for evacuation. But 300,000 lived. The coalition was horrified. Taliban appeared on every screen, demanding an explanation. His crystalline body flickered with rage and confusion. Daejung faced him calmly. "You wanted soldiers. You should have asked what kind of wars we fought. You murdered 10,000 civilians. I saved 300,000. You would have saved none. We have laws, rules, honor, and you've been losing for 10 years. Daejung's voice was cold, empty of emotion. "You hired us to do what you cannot. We will win your war, but you will not like how we do it." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Daejung stood alone on his command deck. He had given the order. He would live with it, the way he lived with all his other choices. Someone had to. Behind him, Hana spoke softly. "The crew is asking if we did the right thing." "Tell them the truth," Daejung replied. "I don't know, but it's done, and we're still here." The war had begun, and humanity had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to fight for survival.